one of the most important artists of this generation.
John is famous all over.
John Baldessari makes an art out of making you aware of how you think.
John is one of the key figures for the shift from making art objects to art being more about ideas.
John has always been young and creative and interested and a discoverer.
And John is always twisting things, turning things upside down, inside out.
I think almost every artist who studied in LA would acknowledge that John Baldessari was an influence on their work.
John always tries to do something different.
There's an open-endedness, there's a playfulness.
He's a very jovial man, but if you get to know him, he's also a very serious person.
He's always pushing for something new or out of the box.
I don't know if there's a more inspiring artist on the American scene today.
Well, it's a little difficult to talk about John in some ways because he's like a pioneer in his own frontier. His work, it's not part of the regular momentum of art. I feel like he's a unique person in that respect. Those truly innovative works took a long time to catch on.
John Baldessari, one of the great artists of Los Angeles. He's always turning the premise upside down. It's a bit of an X-ray vision, making us see a different view on the world and how we live.
He got a relatively late start as a well-known artist, much later than some other artists of his generation.
Well, my first success was in Europe because they just understood what I was doing more than the galleries would understand it here in the States.
I think this is true for many Los Angeles artists. And it's a strange phenomenon that you make the work here. It's a little bit overlooked in New York, but in Europe, they're saying, there's something very special happening in Los Angeles.
We are here in the Museum Dontanus in Deurne, which is like 10 kilometers from Ghent. It was always my dream to do something with John, and I think it was absolutely necessary that the museum in Belgium should show John's work.
Joost asked if I would do a show in this space, and I had the idea that, well, I could use an overview of 5 gallery shows I did, called the Prima Facie series.
It was for him an absolute opportunity to bring this series together. They were never together before. So that's the reason why we did it.
To see, let's say, results of a year's work all in one space is good. Normally, it's just a few at a time and you're working on in your studio, so then you can see how everything holds up, what you think about it, and that's one of the good things a museum show can give one. Good morning, Nan. How are you?
Fine, and you?
Are you sure about that couple being together?
Let me look. Let's walk around here and see. Everything arrived okay, and it's all here, so I know it's just a matter of moving things around until we get it right. Well, I think pretty much that one should be
there,
yeah.
Middle of the...
Yeah, don't you think?
That's nice.
Yeah. Well, first we're going to hang Sunshiny and see how that looks. And then if that looks okay, poof, I don't know. Probably this one over here is this Cloudy Sky in Heaven, because that's going to be a very large piece. Yeah, well, no, we can't have this in the way, of course, yeah. So the stack piece we put right here. Works just don't automatically go up on the wall. I think we should start with that one, maybe.
Yes.
The first 2 days was really looking from which piece could come where and why. How can we bring the pieces together that they reinforce each other instead of killing each other?
Once you get the actual work in the actual space, some of the things you thought would work in theory do not work out in practice. I mean, from the post to the wall, and then that goes in the middle? Yeah. But then where do we put that piece? Do we move it on that side of the post? Or if you have anything in line with it, you're not going to see it when you come in.
First
started with the
started with that one.
You know, what we're going to do is hang all the pieces that really have to be in certain places, you know, and then the ones that we can be adjustable, then we'll figure it out. It's like you put the couch first before the table lamp. You don't put the table lamp and then adjust it to the couch to it, you know. How much is 30, like that?
This is 22, 30 is like that.
Yeah, that's good.
Should it be then like one colored one and black and white?
Well, I think we should mix it up a bit.
We mix it up, of course.
You're the curator. Go to work.
Go ahead. My name's Anne Sestelin, and I'm an art historian, and I help put the show together. And I've been a friend of John's for quite a long time, and I've met all his gallerists by now. So my job was to talk to their gallerist, and in order to get the works here and talk to the collectors. And most pieces we got, and if you know there's an exception, then you just look for an alternative together with John. And that was quite easy. We only had like 2 or 3 things we had to change around, and it worked pretty well.
Maybe we should just cut out things. Let's cut that one here. You can be my editor.
John is somebody with whom I'm the most closest, because he's a fine person and because he's such a warm artist. I'm here as a friend. I'm very happy that John has a museum show in Belgium.
Just hold it like this. Just one more. Okay, now I'm going to, like this. Exactly like this. Hold it, like this. So can you, yeah. Can you slightly close your eyes there, yeah, for the light? That's it. I think we have it.
Good.
Okay.
There is a very good friend of mine. Has the biggest collection of posters.
They look very familiar.
And you know that? You see?
I've never seen these for years.
He had thousands of posters from all this generation of artists.
All the good artists.
All the good ones. All the good ones. When you first get started out, I started in the late 60s. Nobody had any money. The gallerists didn't have any money. The artists didn't have any money. So you're doing everything the cheapest way possible. So as people's situations get better and, you know, economically, things get easier. And so you get more relaxed. I know as time goes on, the hotel I'm in is going to have an elevator. I'm not going to have to walk up 6 flights of stairs. I think also as I go on, I get more confident of myself, although I'm never completely confident until the show is completely up. And then I have nightmares that during the night it's all going to fall down.
Baron always has beautiful posters also.
I can see he has very good taste.
Yeah.
But when I worry about things that I should worry about, you know, not about needless things, you know, that I don't have to worry about. My worst incident, I think, where was it? God. Well, I've had a few, more than a few. Another show in Italy. They wanted to frame the works there. I said, okay. So I get there, and all the frames are painted red. And I'm trying to remain calm. And I said, oh, my God, I made the diagram in a red pencil so they would see it. But I said, I sent you a sample of the frame, physical, black metal. She said, well, that's what my framer said also. So this series took 5 gallery shows to complete, all addressing the same problem, this prima facie matching a word to an image. And I've often said that I hold a word equal to an image and an image equal to a word, that one could replace the other. The interaction of language and imagery. So you see a lot of that going on. The exhibition has the overall title of a prima facie, which is a legal term. It means on first evidence or first sight. And I use it for this series of works where I'm using an expression on somebody's face and then trying to find an appropriate word that might describe that expression or that emotional state of that person. But it's on first evidence, first sight. I don't know the person. I'm only looking at a photograph. But I think it's a common experience. We look at somebody and we say they look angry. They're probably not angry at all. Maybe they have an upset stomach or what. We don't know. But, you know, that's the look they convey. The first gallery show was in Los Angeles, and they were very simple black and white photographs and then a word. and then a stack of them where you have several of them. The second show was where I began to use color photograph, and sometimes there'd be one or sometimes two words where you would have the opposite emotion. Like if I said happy down here, it might be sad or whatever. I'm offering a choice, less of me dictating. And then the third one was where I began to make a whole list of words and use single colors as the green face, and these are all words that would convey greenness, and you could choose what kind of green you think is there. And then I began to explore color samples for every paint company, began to look at the titles for them, and a lot of times the titles, you can't guess what the color is. And so then I began to design my works just in terms of language. I would take whatever color was there just because I chose that word. We were still using facial images, so if there was a color, I was trying to make that work with the person's expression. And then in the last work, I began to drop out the expression completely and just have the pure color and the name of the color. And there I'm actually using the paint, so that color is not photographically printed, but it's the actual paint painted on the canvas. So you can actually buy a paint from a paint company that's called mayonnaise, and that is the color you will get. So this way I get the color by way of the choice of the words. And then we had a big argument in my studio with my assistants that that was not the color of mayonnaise. And I said, it doesn't matter, because that's what somebody decided in the paint company the color of mayonnaise was. So it's an interesting phenomenon, because we do it every day. You know, we have to call a tree a tree. We can't call it butter because it's a tree. But we could put any word to an object. It doesn't really matter. And that was the end of it. I mean, there was nowhere else to go, so I stopped.
No, I think it's perfect. There is much light in the space, but also the colors, the white, the atrium, it all works well. Do you agree, John?
Yeah, I think it looks very good.
Whenever I have the chance to come to any of John's shows, I do. He's a great friend. I mean, he's a very, very influential teacher, and he's an extremely generous artist. Growing up in Portugal and studying there and being a bit younger than he was kind of my hero of mine. For the people of my generation, I studied in the late 60s. For us, this kind of attitude, this kind of focus on mind over matter, on what you really wanted to do, this beginning of what was then called the conceptual art, was extremely important for us. Now you can look, you have historical distanciation to see how important it was, and it really was. And little did he know probably that there were so many people so far away from LA that were looking at his work and really interested in what he's doing.
John Baldessari's art is strong and well known all over the world. And it's quite an event for Belgium that he's here, and everybody is happy with it, I think.
It's an honor of Museum Dondanus, and that he is showing his work actually of the recent period here, that he brings us together.
I love it. I simply love it.
It looks great. The work is perfect for the space.
Well, I know the work of John Baldessari from his 70s work already. It's really nice to see again now in the 21st century how this work is doing right now.
It's very strong work, and you can see that there is a whole world behind the work, and it shows a lot of development, a lot of thinking, a lot of thoughts about this world. It's all in there.
If he is a conceptual artist, he's the most funny one. He makes jokes of it. He's not over-serious like some are.
Look at this. This is a wonderful show. It's the kind of show that, as an artist, you come in and you feel a punch in your stomach. And that's what I want, and that's what I like.
I do think art comes out of art. I mean, I'm going to have new ideas just looking at this work now and seeing it all in relationship. So Yeah, you're always navigating in your mind about which direction I'm going, but this work is over. You know, I'm now occupied in a whole new series of works. I'm thinking about those new works I'm already showing in New York, and that's a lot on my mind, but I'm very happy with how everything came out. I think that's enough for me.
It's astonishing that John is 75 years old now because he's so youthful. He's got such a gracious and low-key and funny manner, really. I think that can mislead you a little bit about how focused he really is. That's something that's been consistent all the way through in John's career.
Baldessari Studio, this is Shelley.
There was a watershed moment for Baldessari when he burned all the paintings he had made up until that time.
So he started from zero. He started from zero. Artists don't get that opportunity very often. And John forced it on himself by just evaporating everything he made.
I think the fact that he was already a little bit older and really had nothing at stake in terms of an art career enabled him to make some of these radical leaps forward.
I was looking at all my paintings as they were a surrogate for me. They were me, you know, so in effect I was cremating myself. Painting, I was giving it up for dead.
It was an experience that shifted his own mind from making paintings to making art which could include photography, which could include text, which could be montages of film stills, or could even be installation work.
I made it public because it's sort of like dieting, and you have to tell people you're dieting because then if you don't diet, then they remind you of it.
But at one point, bam, he started. And all those works are genius. They're all genius works.
No, we haven't figured this one out. I started doing art in 1957. I think it was about the mid-'80s before I began to not have to depend on teaching to exist.
John has that really rare capacity to be an artist and a teacher, and to succeed at both of them.
I do enjoy teaching, but now I consider it a luxury to teach because my job in life is not to be a teacher, it's to be an artist.
I don't think that teaching has held him back at all. Maybe quite to the contrary. If it's not in interacting with some students, well, he's working on his art. So he's like living it 24 hours a day.
And so he has turned out a number of very important artists over the years.
John's an artist in the sense that a lot of artists that I know have, if they haven't studied with him in school, they've certainly been influenced by him.
He had a class called Post-Studio Art, and he took us on tours and showed us LA and showed us the art world. He was tremendous. I mean, one of the things I truly remember, he was traveling a lot. And whenever he went to Europe, when he came back, he always had a suitcase filled with catalogs and with magazines and with everything he'd gather on the trip. And he spilled them onto the floor. And we were like, you know, to the meat, lions. I mean, it was just rah, 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 going through it all and then discussing everything. It was fantastic.
How can you do it all? How did he do it all? And then also make the art at the same time. Pretty good.
I think I have a gift of seeing life slightly askew, and that helps me a lot. I mean, I don't see anything etched in stone, you know, as a given. I always think there are other ways of understanding things. I think I have a gift for art making, whatever art is. I mean, people seem to accept what I do as art, maybe not at first, but you know, then you finally you're convinced enough people that what you do is art, and then you're home free. My show in New York at a private gallery, Marion Goodman Gallery, You're always aware in New York that it's a tough town. It's always difficult because, for me, New York, that's the city that is the most severe in criticism and the most judgmental. And I've always made a joke of it by saying I have to do a show every 2 years in New York to renew my license to do art. And then I can do art for another 2 years. It's tough, you know, and one feels the pressure from your peers and from the press and collectors and so on. So you want to do the very best possible show you can. I just had a big retrospective show in Vienna, and a few of the early paintings were in that show, and I was reminded that even back then I was doing paintings of a fragment of a body, noses or ears. They still look good, and so when I was looking around for what I would do after this, I thought, well, I think I'll get back using the nose and ear as a subject. You know, going at it, it was what I work with now, which is kind of a combination for text, photography, and painting. And I said, well, that's a subject that hasn't been explored by artists too much, and I'll do that. Formally, I think they're getting to me more about color. I've always been a fan of Matisse, and I think that's coming out. And I'm working no longer with one plane, surface plane, let's say, of the photograph that's, you know, flat. I'm interrupting that by now having a plane in front of the surface of the photograph and a plane behind. It's almost like low relief sculpture, so it might occupy 3 inches, where normally you might just have a ½ an inch with, you know, the mounting and so on. So they're more sculptural.
This work is radically new for John, and yet it's very much rooted to ideas that have been simmering in the work for a very long time. This whole idea of collage and the wit and the humor, but in a kind of way that's much more exuberant.
The parts that he chooses to eliminate are the parts that you would normally most be interested in seeing, you know, so he blocks them out and forces you to concentrate on what's around it. So you kind of recontextualize an image.
In these works, he's commenting on the idea of what we think art is supposed to be, that somehow it's supposed to be perfect, it's supposed to be centered, it's supposed to be a painting, it's supposed to have a narrative to it, and of course he goes the opposite direction.
He's made things simple, but once you look closely at them and think about them, they're really rich with meaning. And I think that ties in with his ideas of bringing conceptual art to a big audience. I think that's what he really achieved.
He's an artist. When you see the work, it reveals itself as a kind of puzzle over time. But the way he evolves, I think, is what's really fascinating to see the next move he's going to make.
I think I survived okay. When I looked at all the works up on the wall, I couldn't think of anything I would have changed to say, oh my God, I should have done that or I should have done that. And they all looked exactly as I wanted them to look. If I ever stopped getting nervous about doing a show, I'd be worried. You know, that would mean I've gotten insensitive, I think, somehow. I should be worried. But what you don't want is worried to the point where you are immobilized and you can't do anything. Good, healthy fear is a good motivation. I go one step at a time. And if I think I've exhausted an idea, then I'll stop and go on to something else.
You have that sense with John's work, is that things are being discovered, real things are being discovered. That doesn't happen often when things are like that. And that energy that surrounds that discovery, I think, is what people are picking up on. It's tremendous.
There's been a number of things that have happened over the last couple of years, which I think have shown that John has finally gotten his due as an artist. One of them is a major retrospective which will be happening at the Tate. The Hammer gave him an award for Artist of the Year, and the Americans for the Arts honored him as an artist as well. So I think we're seeing John as this maker of culture of the late 20th century and the early 21st century.
If you look at how his work has progressed and developed and gone through so many different sort of phases and interests and sort of offshoots here and there. It's impossible to think of an artist of his generation that has been as free and has had as much generosity in their work.
It's not just that he made work back in the 1960s or 1970s, but he's also part of the experience of art right now.
It's very exciting because it's amazing just that he can grow, you know, and develop and just be full of ideas.
I feel a little embarrassed to admit this, but I have a very religious attitude about talent, and I think if you have talent, then you have to use it as wisely and as best you can, and that means you only have so much time. Being an artist is also a life of sacrifice. You're always, having to give up something. I know that sounds romantic, but you just have to get more and more focused, and the more you focus, that means the more you have to exclude some things.
Like what?
Being an international playboy. Can't do that anymore.
For me, first and foremost, is to make a beautiful picture. But if it's just purely aesthetic experience, it's not good enough. That beauty needs to be undercut with this kind of undercurrent of something psychological or dangerous or something desirous or fearful. Ultimately, I want it to all become one world upon itself.
I think Gregory is a very important figure within the history of photography. I think he has shifted the language of photography significantly in the past decade.
Pharrell Williams here.
Hi, I'm Joy Bryant.
I'm Eric Ripper.
I'm Tom Colicchio.
I'm Dr. Frank Lipman, the host of On the Table,
The host of Across the Board.
Host of Artist Talk.
Host of Hooked Up.
Host of the show Be Well Week, Be Well Weekend on the Reserve channel.
It's only on Reserve.
Did you know that you can follow my show on social media sites like Facebook?
Follow us on Twitter.
If you're a fan of my show, hit the like button.
All of the above.
Share me with your friends.
Treat yourself. Check out a new episode of my show, Hooked Up.
And if you want to leave comments, feedback, ideas, whatever, love to hear from you. Leave a comment.
And if you don't want to miss the show, be sure to subscribe.
The one that's like down here, or is it here? Somewhere down here.
Thanks for watching the Reserve channel.
Only on YouTube. Throw caution to the wind and ask yourself what rules.
Can you say that in a complete sentence?
No. I'm an artist. I don't use complete sentences. You have to say the whole thing over again?
Yes.
You got something on your teeth. Now she doesn't know what to say. Now ask me a question in a complete sentence.
I can't.
See?
What's your name and what do you do?
My name is John, and art has been very good to me.